right. Hello, welcome everyone who is with us on this journey tonight. I'm Michelle Tyrene Johnson, and I am here to be the moderator to first of all congratulate and celebrate Louisville Urban League for its 100th anniversary. That is not even a small thing in the best of times. And right now, these are not the best of times. So, congratulations and thank you all for this illustrious panel that is here. As the moderator, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about who I am. My day job, as I call it, my day job is I am the associate producer at WFPL, which is NPR's Louisville member station. And we have a weekly talk show. I'm the associate producer. I also have a podcast called Race Unwrapped that I host and produce. And actually, if you want to hear a dynamic conversation, my very first interview was with our own Sadiqa Reynolds, and that was the number of people who, after hearing that conversation, they were primed for the rest of the conversations. In my nightlife, in my weekends, in my holidays, and all my spare moments, I'm a playwright, and I've been a playwright for about 10 years. I'm from Kansas City, originally. I'm from the Kansas side, but I claim the Missouri side. So, I used to be an attorney, believe it or not everybody who is an attorney wants to stay an attorney. So I was in journalism and I was an attorney and I did diversity and inclusion work and I became a playwright and now I'm back in journalism. And so I am very honored to be here doing this. I'm living right here on Broadway, so there's a slight chance that a protest may go down the street that I live on. But trust me, if there is one, it will not be a protest about anything that we all don't support. So, on that note, I am going to turn it to each of the panelists to very briefly tell us who they are. Mr. Morale, we're going to start with you.
Hey, let me thank you all very much. And I want to say congratulations to the Louisville Urban League for 100 years. Now you're 100 years young. 100 years young. We don't use the word old. We don't use it in our vocabulary because the Louisville Urban League, under the dynamic Sadiqa Reynolds, is young, energetic, dynamic, and a transformer in the city of Louisville in so many ways. So I'm proud to be here and lead the National Urban League, the nation's largest historic civil rights and urban advocacy organization, and work with great colleagues like Sadiqa and Kenge and just great leaders all over the country where we do the important work to empower communities and change lives and work for an equitable future.
Thank you, Mr. Morial. And so we're going to go to Nkinge Harmon Johnson. I love your last name. If you're a Johnson, you good peoples.
Ms. Michelle, I appreciate you. I am Nkinge Harmon Johnson. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Urban League of Portland. For more than 75 years now, we have served all of Oregon and Southwest Washington with our unique blend of civil rights, social justice, programmatically and policy-based, right here in the heart of this community where so many challenges have faced us. My guess is that my video is going to cut out from time to time. It looks like it's happening now because we are still in the midst of a more than week-long blackout due to an ice storm. We're still in the midst of dealing with some infrastructure challenges, but I could not be more delighted to be here this evening with my colleagues, Sadiqa Reynolds, Michael McMillan, Mark Morial, and you, Ms. Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. I will say briefly, though, I am a FAMU Rattler. I am a Howard University School of Law lawyer, proud to be one and delighted to be with you all this evening in celebration of your 100th anniversary, Sadiqa. Your leadership is something that I admire and seek to follow day to day. Thank you, my sister.
The timing was incredible because your introduction covered the protest that went down my street. So that's why I went to mute real quick. Mr. Michael P. McMillan, we look forward to having your introduction, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle. It is truly an honor to participate in tonight's program where we pay tribute to the 100 years of the Louisville Urban League and the dynamic, competent, qualified, capable, able, and quite frankly, charismatic leadership of Sadiqa Reynolds. She is an inspiration to all of us in terms of what she does every day for the people in that community, how she has stood strong in the Urban League movement, made a difference, given back, transformed lives, and transformed communities, having just recently orchestrated and completed, to the best of my knowledge, and our national president, Mark Morial, can confirm that that is the largest development that any urban league has seen fit to conceptualize and then actually implement in a community in terms of a $53 million development that all of us are proud of, that we reference, that we thank her for her leadership, her vision, her capacity to see it through. And so in St. Louis, we are big fans of all of our Urban League colleagues that you see on the screen, and very proud to serve under the leadership of Mark Morial. I've had the privilege of being president here in St. Louis for about 8 years and have been a member of the Urban League movement since I was 16. So I am a lifelong urban leaguer. I love this movement. I cannot think of another place that I would rather be that serves the interests of the African-American community, but also serves as the bridge between the government, the corporate, the business, the philanthropic, and other interests that want to serve inner cities and African-American people across this country. Thank you.
And never last and never least, Sadiqa Reynolds, please let those of us who don't already know who you are know more about who you are.
Well, thank you. I'm really honored that you all took time out of your schedules to be with me tonight. I really do appreciate it. I'm Sadiqa Reynolds. I'm the president and CEO of the Louisville Urban League. Our focus, we say it very concisely: jobs, justice, education, health, and housing. That's what the Louisville Urban League is about. And we're here tonight to celebrate 100 years. And you all know there are shoulders that we stand on. There are people who made it possible for us to be here where we are. And I'm thankful for them. And I hope that my legacy and my life and my work here will honor everyone who came before me. And it matters to me that my colleagues, think that my work is good, because certainly I know how much you all are sacrificing in the communities where you are and what you give every day. So thank you all for tonight. And Mark, thank you for your leadership, for never embarrassing us on CNN or any of the other national networks. We appreciate you. And Michelle, for you too, I want to say it is an honor to have you moderate this conversation. I think it's important for us to highlight the work that you have done and also the work you are doing in our community. So thanks for your time.
Oh, thank you. Coming from you, that is indeed quite the compliment. I lived in Louisville about 30 years ago, where I worked for the Louisville Courier-Journal as a very young newspaper reporter. So coming back 30 years later, where there was a lot of changes and growth and development, one of the first names I knew was Sadiqa Reynolds. So it's good to be in this company. So I'm going to start off with a question that is something each of you can answer very well. The Urban League describes itself as its work as the movement. So how do each of you describe the work of the movement?
It's probably important to talk about the historical terminology, which is really evolved from the very beginning of the league. So in the beginning of the National Urban League was fundamentally an organization of Black social workers. Our first 4 presidents were all social workers. Our founder, George Edmund Haynes, had a PhD in social work from Columbia University, the first African-American to earn such a degree. And in those days, social work was a relatively new discipline, which was a discipline of serving people's social, economic, psychological health needs. And it operated on a theory of case management, where you work with every individual about their very specific needs. And so that quote unquote movement terminology is that it was a movement of Black social workers to make a difference in urban communities. As we have evolved, we like to see ourselves as a movement because we are an ecosystem of a combination of paid professionals, like our 3 CEOs, like myself, and all of our paid staffs, who are assisted by and who work in conjunction with a large group of volunteers and community leaders, everything from young professionals to guilders, to leaders in business, in labor, in faith communities who align around our very important work, which is civil rights, it's direct services, it's community development, it's the promotion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's got a little bit of an antecedent that is a bit different from how we see it today. But I like the term movement because in a movement, anyone who aligns with what we believe in can be a part. And the doors to this church, the doors to this tent, the doors to this movement are always open to each and every person, no matter who they are, who's aligned with our philosophy, our mission, and our work.
Nkinge, are you talking?
If I may jump in and
there
say,
you go.
Michelle,
Yes.
I figured it out. I would like to build upon what President Morial said. You know, I'm the chief executive of a civil rights and social justice organization in the whitest big city in America, in a place where it was illegal to be Black. It was against the law to live in this state. It's why the population of Black people is relatively small compared to California to the south, compared to Washington State to the north. It's among the reasons why. And yet our Urban League is 75 years old. It is because Black folks have learned about this place, what other people have learned about this place, what our Indigenous brothers and sisters knew from the very beginning, that Oregon and the Pacific Northwest is a beautiful place to call home, to raise a family, to do business, to build health and wealth. And yet I am connected to President Morial. I am connected to President McMillan. I am connected to my sister CEO, Sadiqa Reynolds, because we are members of this movement. I could certainly do this work on my own in my hood, disconnected from all of them. And I feel like I've done that since I was a young girl, but it is more powerful. It is in fact more intricate. I am able to cut and paste and beg, borrow, steal from what they do, to copy, to repeat, and also to share out what we do here in other communities. As folks know who are watching, Portland has been a hotbed for protests, hundreds of days in our community, and a place that probably surprised people. But there are takeaways that happen from what happened in Portland that I can share out to my colleagues in a way that is powerful and that is useful to them in their own communities. Similarly, there are things that I can learn, have learned, am learning from Michael, from Sadiqa, from Mark, that I'm able to use in my own community. That is part of what the movement means to me. It's part of how it's real and active and alive every day.
You know, so Michelle, I would say that, of course, I'm in 100% agreement with our national president and Nkinge is what they have already mentioned in relationship to the movement. And I would say with our national Urban League movement being over 110 years and also with 75, 100, and 103 years represented with the 3 affiliates that you have here tonight, our movement changes over time, but we stay focused on the mission to bring about change in this country and make the United States live up to all the ideals that it professes across the world in terms of democracy and giving everyone equality and the ability to live the American dream. And so over time that changes in terms of how we work on it and what cities and the dynamics of the market. In St. Louis, we don't have the same issue that Nkinge had in terms of African-American participation. We obviously have a very large African-American population here, but we still have many different challenges and issues. But being a part of this national movement gives us the resources, the access, and the ability as America's only civil rights advocacy social service agency that focus on Black people in this country to come together and be the most impactful entity that does that work across America.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all the comments that have been made. And I say this, and I was asked recently, what's your primary thing? What's your primary thing? And I said, justice. If we could get justice, the jobs piece, the housing piece, the workforce, the small business support, all of these other things would fall in line if we could get justice. So I think that's why you see more and more of Urban League, not only just in the offices and doing the work and serving people, we're feeding people, we're helping people get jobs, we're helping with, housing and counseling and all of those things, and also finding it necessary to raise our voices in community to make sure that people understand that we are a part of, I think it's interesting to be a part of the movement, to be to be in the community that you yourself are trying to empower. And I don't think that should ever be lost on someone. I am a Black woman running a civil rights organization, making space for people in rooms where people don't even want me to be. And I think that's important for us to highlight as we do this work and we talk about how we do the work and, all of those things.
So thank you for that. So I moved here to start my job in June last year, and I left Kansas City, and like most major cities, not even just nationally, but internationally, there were protests about police brutality to a degree and with the fire and a heat that people have never seen before. And in moving to Louisville, which was the home of Breonna Taylor, where, as I was saying, literally protest was going down my street nightly my first few months here. I have a question for the Urban League, for each of you. What is it that you think uniquely allows the Urban League, both nationally and your individual chapters, to address the issue, the problem of systemic racism as it applies to disproportionate police brutality, or as I say when I'm not in journalism mode, extrajudicial executions by the police department? So, I mean, Michael McMillan, you are from St. Louis. Michael Brown's, a city that had police brutality and a name that was etched on the consciousness of many of us, but yet people still didn't seem to really respond and react. What is it that Urban League steps up to do?
Well, I think that because we are America's only social service advocacy and civil rights organization, and we are that bridge between the government, the corporate world, the business community, philanthropists, and then grassroots African-American activists and the very people that we serve, who are the huge majority African-American clientele, we have a unique position to plead the case, as Sadiqa just talked about, that she is in the room representing people that don't have a voice. They don't have the opportunity to be in those rooms. And once we get in those rooms, then it is our job in all of our respective cities and at the national headquarters to do as much as we humanly can to bring about justice and change and systemic differences. And so you mentioned Ferguson. So in Ferguson, we can definitely go back and look at where we were and where we are. And you can see that that crisis really lit a fire in many ways under a lot of different elements of our community, not just in Ferguson, but also in the city and then the county as a whole, because the city of Ferguson is only about 20,000 people. And our national president has been there on numerous occasions, was there at the opening of our convention on July 26, 2017, when we opened our Ferguson Community Empowerment Center and launched and focused our Save Our Sons program, which was born out of that crisis, born out of our staff going into the community, asking individuals what they needed, how the Urban League could make a difference, and hearing from every single young man, I need a job, I need a way to take care of myself, my family, and be a responsible member of this community. Can the Urban League hire me, or can you place me in a job? And so luckily now, 6 years later, we've been able to place over 1,000 men into jobs and expand not only in Ferguson, but in the inner city and in the prison system, to be able to go in and teach these young men the Save Our Sons curriculum before they get out. But beyond that, and beyond the Urban League, when Michael Brown sadly died, only 3 out of 53 police officers on the Ferguson Police Department were African American. And now we have our second Black chief of police, Black captains, lieutenants, and sergeants, and half of the actual police department is African American and people of color, because people saw
Wow,
the
that's amazing. Yeah.
and wanted to work on it. And we have our first Black mayor of the city of Ferguson, who was a Black woman, Ella Jones, who was the first Black woman that was on the city council there as well. And the city council went from having 1 out of 6 to half of its members that are African American as well. Now, have we done everything? Absolutely not. There is still work to be done. We still have to stay engaged in the governmental and political process, and we have to stay engaged in making sure that the police do the right thing by the community. But one of the individuals that was actually on that city council named Wesley Bell, who has been featured at some of our National Urban League events as well. He went from being a city councilman representing about 4,000 people to being elected as the first African-American in the history of St. Louis County to defeat a Democratic white incumbent who had been there for about 28 years in his previous role, and now is the prosecuting attorney for the biggest county in the entire state of Missouri. So when you look at the tragedy of Michael Brown's death, it was not in vain in the sense that the community woke up and decided to get involved and try to be involved in the governmental, political, and policing process, in addition to Save Our Sons and what we have done. And we try to make sure that the Urban League is a part of advocating and getting involved and making these types of advancements each and every day in every way that we can.
Anyone else wanna address?
Yeah, let
right?
me add to that. Michael, I think made many very important points in terms of, I think, really recounting the work post Ferguson and the death of Michael Brown. I think the question you posed is why can the Urban League meet this moment? So this is what's important. The Urban League meets this moment as one of many. We don't meet this moment with the approach or the attitude that we alone or we are special in terms of being able to confront this pandemic of institutional and structural racism and exclusion that we face in this nation. But I think we stand on some pillars. One is we stand on the pillar of history, a Black institution, now at the national level, 111 years young, in places like Louisville and Detroit and Boston and Philadelphia and New York City, and I could name many, many others. Our presence is 100 years old. We've stood the test of time through lynching and the Great Depression, through World War II and the 1950s, through fighting to end segregation, to the assaults on affirmative action, to the ages of political empowerment of the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, to a President Barack Obama, to a President Donald Trump, to the long, long history, painful history of Black men and women being victims of police violence. We've stood the test of time. We've been in the fight. We're in the fight when the cameras are there. We're in the fight when the cameras are gone. We're in the fight when everyone is cheering. We're in the fight when everyone is booing. We're in the fight, and we will remain in the fight. We're an enduring institution. I call us a permanent institution. The second thing we stand on in this time, and we've embraced the quote 21st century new movement for Black lives, in terms of being a part of that movement with many, many others. It's a broad movement that defines the fight for justice and equity and to end racism in the times that we live. In these times, we stand on leaders like Nkenge, like Sadiqa, like Michael McMillan, the next generation of urban leaguers whose talent, whose foresight, whose drive, whose courage is truly an inspiration because they picked up the torch and picked up the baton in this long, hard race that we have to fight in this community. So we stand on that also. And the final thing we stand on is we stand on the notion of Black excellence. And that means that we stand on the notion that what we do well. What we do, we well organize. What we do, we follow through. We ain't just playing around. We not just showboat. We not just show horses. We're workhorses. We're not just tree shakers. We're jelly makers. We're in the trenches doing the work. You know, sometimes those of you who've been in this movement work for a long time, and I have for a long time, there are many, many who show up for the shine. And then when the trench work comes, they're gone. The Urban League will never be gone. We will always be here, and we will always fight, and we'll always work, and we'll always battle until racism is dead and gone, and equity and parity rule the day.
Woo! I like that.
Mhm.
I'm only here because this is Louisville hosting this, but I just want to be clear. Like, I'm just let everybody just roll. I am loving this.
And you know, as a journalist, the things that I want to say versus the things that I would say when I wasn't a journalist are two different things. But let's just say I'm here with the power of everything that everybody is saying. You get me. So one question that I have for anybody who wants to answer is, I have this saying that I've had for years, my friends are sick of me saying, which is that there is nothing bad that can happen to you that is made better by being Black. So on that note, how are you? This is why I'm a playwright, because I got work this into my fictional work. So how do how does the Urban League help? I mean, I know a little bit of what it's doing here in Louisville. COVID. What are the ways that you all have to meet your community in a way that other people who should be doing it, maybe not be doing it as well?
Okay, I'm glad you asked this question. It's early out here in Oregon. It's only about 4:30. And right before we got together, y'all, I was talking to the director of my housing department, Ms. Janetta Monk. And she was updating me on a number of things. During this COVID period, we have grown as an organization. We have continued to extend our services to the people in our community because the need is greater. And the Urban League always shows up when there is a need. That is our job, to fit and to flex and to flow into the spaces as our people need us, when and where and how they need us. Well, homelessness has been skyrocketing in Portland. And once upon a time, the city believed that there were no, Black people weren't really homeless because you didn't see us in the usual places. But as you say, the phrase, nothing that bad that can happen to you is made better.
There is nothing bad that can happen to somebody that is made better by being Black.
That part. And certainly homelessness is one of those things. And it's during the COVID pandemic has grown even worse. People are unemployed, they're out of work. Some of the resources that they used to have available to them are no longer available to them. Families are struggling more than ever, and Black folks were hit first, were hit earliest. Now, there are other people of color in this state that are also hammered and hit quite hard, but our jobs were wiped away very early on. The challenges and the struggles that we faced were evident very early on, and unfortunately, our state and our county weren't responsive to those challenges, but we knew, because we are the Urban League, we knew, because we are Black folks, what was coming our way, because it always comes our way. Perhaps we would have been surprised if it would have been different this time, but certainly it was not. So we are 4 times more likely to contract COVID in the state of Oregon, where our population is not large, than other Oregonians are. We are more than twice as likely to be unemployed at a time like this. Right now, there is a rent moratorium an eviction moratorium in our state that's been extended through June. And it's a darn good thing, because when rent comes due for people who aren't able to pay it, there are going to be tens of thousands of Black folks who are likely to be made homeless, to be displaced, because they're not going to be able to afford to pay their back rents. The Urban League has showed up in these spaces to make sure that we are helping folks who pay their rent. We are making deals with landlords, and we are helping tenants to close that gap right now so that they can stay in their homes and aren't too far behind after the moratorium is over. We're also working with people in virtual ways, people who are unemployed and underemployed, to get training that they might need and to find jobs that are available right now, and to be pointed in the right direction for those jobs that are going to be available once the state begins to open up more and more. We have a number of pandemic restrictions right now, so restaurants are closed and sporting venues and all of these things, with these jobs that may be easier to get when you're in a pinch aren't available right now, but we're helping people to be in a position to access those jobs later on. When it comes to vaccinations, I think the story is the same all over the country, colleagues, is that Black folks should certainly be getting vaccinated at higher rates, because we are harmed by this virus. We were killed by this virus at higher rates, and yet our vaccination rates have been lower, not merely because of our rightful mistrust of medical systems, but also because the vaccine has not been made available in our communities. Just recently, as I've mentioned, Danetta Monk, I was talking to this afternoon, we hosted a COVID vaccination clinic at the homeless transitional shelter that the Urban League operates. The shelter has been in operation for just about 6 months now. We created it in response to the pandemic, and we house Black and Indigenous elders who are at greater risk for COVID, especially when they're living on the streets. They now live with us, and they are looked after by my staff and my team. We were able to provide most of them with COVID vaccinations in the past several weeks, but we've had to fight for access to the vaccine. We've had to negotiate with our county to get vaccine doses for this population who ought to be targeted first. But if the Urban League weren't in that space, if Ms. Danetta Monk weren't in that space, would the folks who we serve be getting those vaccinations? And the answer is simply no, because the people who are paid by our public dollars to do it, they would get around to it, I think. But they certainly wouldn't have done it yet, but for us stepping into that space. So there are many, many ways that we are showing up for our community and doing the things that need to be done during the pandemic. I will share one more example with you, and that is helping to feed families. There are a number of African immigrant families in our Somali community here in Oregon. Is the largest population of African immigrants, and they have been very hard hit by the pandemic. Some of their businesses and their entrepreneurial ventures, and have come up with their own mutual aid activities to deliver food boxes to families. But months ago, my brother, Musea Lal, who runs the organization, said they ran out of money to pay for gas to drive the vehicles to people's homes to deliver those food boxes. Well, the Urban League showed up and I wrote them a check. Take this, put gas in people's cars, get that food where it needs to go, because that's something that we can do right now without asking anyone else to step in between me and my brothers and sisters in that community to serve and to help them. That is an example of what we do, how we do it, and how we can do it quickly in place of those public agencies and officials who ought to be doing it. But that said, part of our role is also on the policy side. I think Mr. Morial mentioned that, Mr. McMillan mentioned that, and Ms. Reynolds is an example of what it's like for us to fight on the policy side. So not only do we share resources and create programs for our community very quickly, but we also go back to those folks, that county, that city, the state, the federal government that ought to be doing for our people, and demand the resources for our people. That's all a part of the special mix that we bring, especially during this pandemic time. So you asked me, I'm fired up about that. I could say more, but
No, I'm glad you're fired up.
Very close to my heart.
So, the Urban League in general, I would argue, and is never been perceived as, except to people who just don't like any Black people, as a radical organization. As Mr. Morrell said, workhorse. The Urban League is considered a workhorse organization. So I'm really curious, because I wouldn't be me if I didn't try to stir up a little something. What do you think about President Biden's call for unity? Too soon?
Look, I'll say, presidents and politicians, when you're an elected leader, you play a different role than activists play. I've been an elected leader. You have certain fiduciary obligations. And there's no doubt that the president's call for unity is an effort to directly contrast his administration with the previous administration, with the administration of Donald Trump. But unity is not unanimity. People get the two concepts confused. Unity is when there's an operating consensus around an approach and a set of values to move an organization or a city or a state or a nation forward. It's impossible to have unanimity. I'll give you an example. I think the American people are united in favor of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Just look at the polling. I looked at it today. The support for the provisions in the bill are broad and deep and wide and significant. But you're going to see lots of loud noise from people who are going to suggest to people that it's a divisive issue. The COVID relief bill that the president has put on the table, 70 to 75% of the American people support the provisions of that bill. Yet, what's not united is politicians in Washington, people who want to obstruct progress. So these terms, see, I get a little uneasy with all these radical, this, that, do, term, labels, right? Labels. And I think sometimes we eschew labels because we can be forceful, we can be principled, we can be diplomats, we can be mediators, we can be on the cutting edge of something. And I refuse to allow us as an ecosystem, as an entity, as an organization to be defined by anything other than our emphasis, our commitment to racial justice. And I say to people who are all across the political spectrum, I got a bottom line, and it's racial justice. And if you dance with that, I'm dancing with you. I don't care where you sit on the political spectrum. If you dance with that, we can work together. If you don't want to dance with that, then we're not going to have a good time working together. We have to define who we are and not allow all this political terminology, mainstream labels that want to assign to people a definition. We are advocates. We are social service providers. We are community developers. Look at what Sadiqa Reynolds did in Louisville. Look at what Michael McMillan has done in Ferguson, Missouri. They have built these physical institutions that are going to last for decades and decades and decades, that in their core, they've taken areas that were left out, locked out, redlined, and breathed new energy, new life, and humanity into them. Is that radical? Is that radical? To take a field of weeds and bottles and syringes, to take a burned out quick stop,
gas station,
and turn it into something. You know what that is? It's action over just rhetoric, making something happen versus just talking and saying and making a lot of threats. There are many roles that we have to play in a movement, right? And we are comfortable and we are committed to the role we play. Because I'll say this, if the Urban League did not exist, there'd be somebody in a strategic plan trying to invent it.
Right on, Mark.
Drop the mic.
Ms. Michelle, you should. And I hate to speak up after that, but because of the face I made before you started talking, Mark, I think I should explain myself briefly.
These guys have done such incredible work. I mean, Kenge's been on the front line in Portland with the madness happening there.
And
Man,
how
just man.
and housing homeless people. And I think that one thing that's important too is when you think about all of the other organizations in Louisville, there are a lot of other organizations. Our relationship with the government may be a little bit different. So when you asked the question, Michelle, about what we were doing with COVID-19, we never closed our doors. The day that I sent most of my staff home was the same day that I learned that Breonna Taylor had been killed. You know, in that moment, like the three of us are sitting in here trying to figure out what happened with police, what happened with this woman who was dead, who was, you know, a hospital employee. And then also, are we going to be able to continue to work? And if so, how are we going to be able to do it? And we never closed. We could not afford to stay at home. We knew that we were essential because people would need us. So what have we done? In some cases, we gave people food. In some cases, we had to cook the food and deliver it. We had to open our, I promised my team, I'll never forget this. I said, listen, we don't know what's going on with this virus, but luckily you don't have to worry. Nobody is going to ask us to do any COVID testing because we all were scared to death. At the time, we didn't know what was happening. And I told them we will never have to do that. And almost as soon as I finished that sentence, we opened the doors, and we did COVID testing. And I'm like, everybody needs to work, guys. We gotta get our community tested because we are being impacted. We are dying. We have underlying conditions. We have to do something. So we have tested had more than 1,000 people here at the league being tested. We had to help people navigate the unemployment system. Folks just sitting for days and days on hold. In some cases, I'm texting with people in our capital to say, I've got 32 people here. My staff is on hold. I need your help. I need you to help with these people. In some cases, everything that we normally do, literally the job training and testing, my team, we would normally have folks in here for 6 weeks. They go through training, they graduate, and they get a job. Well, everybody wasn't ready to go virtual. We weren't really ready in some cases to go virtual with our, well, we just didn't have the clientele that you just automatically switch to virtual and everybody's going to be fine. That's not how it works. So we met them in the parking lot. When we understood that we could not be under one roof because we needed to be safe, we met our clients in the parking lot, gave them the testing so that they could pass the test and go ahead and move forward with their jobs. We've still been able to graduate these classes. We've still been able to help with resumes. When the school system could not reach all of the students because there were just some challenges with reaching out to some of the parents because parents were still in some cases having to work. In other cases, maybe they lost their jobs. Whatever the case, the people we serve were devastated. So we went out and found 238 parents that the school system couldn't reach to make sure that their kids had the proper, the laptops and things that they needed. So we continue to do all of the work that we do every single day, housing, counseling, whatever. We did all of that, but we added to it all the things that you have to add because you are responding to a crisis. So unlike my sister, we did not start a homeless shelter. We didn't do that. But what we have done, we have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in rent. We have had to pay for people to get hotels immediately. In some cases, the protesters might have called and said, listen, Sadiqa, here's a situation. We got a woman here with her child or her nephew. Can you help us out? And we have stepped in every way imaginable. Even where, in the beginning, we had to transport people at times, and that's a risk. I mean, even making sure that we were getting people to the polls. I mean, we organized and delivered on transportation. So I think the league in every city, all of my colleagues have said, we are doing our work plus some. So I have to be really honest about this pandemic period and tell you, I have had days where I'm like, all of these people who are telling me they're bored and they want to get out of the house. And I'm like, God, when is my day to be bored? I'm thankful. I'm so thankful to be of service, but I would just like a little bit of that, just 24, 48 hours to just be bored and to be able to contemplate, a better way, And I'm sure you all feel the same.
Come on, Sadiqa, you're telling me that dealing with every conceivable problem that a Black person could have right now isn't boring? I mean, come on now, come on. I need, you wanted to speak up on the fact that I was laughing at your lovely face when I asked my little, people talk about how the media stirs the pot. I had to do my job and stir the pot by asking about unity. So the look on your face, you want to respond to that.
I will just say briefly, thank you for the opportunity. I'm a former congressional staffer. I worked both in the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate. I worked in the Obama administration, and I've attended the inauguration every year since I was in college, through law school, long before I worked in Washington, D.C. It means something to me. I went when the past occupant of the White House was inaugurated. I was there, me and 15 other people, because it is part of how I express my patriotism, my love for my country, my dedication to public service. It means something to me. And these seditionists rode up in my Capitol, wreaking havoc in ways that are unimaginable to me, quite frankly, that walking the halls that I was honored to walk in. Even when I go back and visit, when we are there every spring with President Morial and others from the from the Washington Bureau, our policy bureau of the National Urban League, for our policy day, I walk through the Hill, walk through the Capitol with reverence because it means something to me. So to see those suckers, those punks, those fools, those liars, those cheats, fouling the halls that I frankly fought so hard, trained so thoroughly to be a part of, disgusts me. And the idea that I'm going to unify with them, listen, I'll wait for them to come on my side where the good sense resides. I won't be on my way to them anytime soon. But I know that they're the fringe. They're not the bulk of who America is. So I don't have to worry about them too much. But it does make me smile when I hear folks say unify, because I need to know what they mean by that. I know what I mean by it, but I need to know what they mean by it. And that's what my face was all about when you asked that question. So thank you.
And I want to add something to this too. There has to be some truth. This country has to be willing to sit with the pain of what has happened, what has been done to Black people. And there just seems to be no time for that, no tolerance for real conversations and real work. It's like we're all trying to work in this window and do everything as quickly as we can. I want a national conversation around the contradictions of an America that would arrest people for not marching on the sidewalk during a protest, for crossing this imaginary line in the street, but allowing what happened on January the 6th in Washington, D.C. to take place. We've got to talk about that. We've got to deal with the consequences of it. We've got to deal with the irresponsible attorney general in Kentucky that would not see the case through, that didn't even review the entire case. We've got to talk about consequences. We can't continue like this. And so I agree exactly with what Mark said. There is a difference between being unanimous and being, unified, whatever. We've got to really think about how we push our country, how we push our elected leaders who ride in on Black backs. They ride into office on our backs. And then what do they offer us? It has never been good enough. And we've got to be willing to say that and call them on it. And I think that we are, but I like the points that my colleagues are making, right? There is a way to do everything. And for us, it is always about the end result. It is always about getting to the end result, not just being in the fight for the sake of the fight. I don't mind being bloodied, but I want to actually win when it's over.
Michelle, if I could, I just want to add something to the mix for all of the listening audience. So when you see the passion, when you see the eloquence, when you see the hard work, the dynamism that you just have experienced with just a brief conversation with Sadiqa, and then when you hear about the enormity that they have been doing in terms of the increased amount of services during COVID, and then the general day-to-day work of the Louisville Urban League, what we are not keeping into this conversation in terms of the depth and magnitude of 2020 into 2021 is the fact that this woman conceptualized, worked, implemented, and created this $53 million development in the heart of the Black community in Louisville. And so on behalf of all of her colleagues who will not get a chance to see her in person, I just want to say thank you. We appreciate you. We love you. We respect you. We admire your work. And we commend you because they have the right one in Louisville. They have the right one in Portland. And we have the right one in our national leader. And it is a pleasure to be a part of this conversation tonight, paying tribute really to the Louisville Urban League, 100 years of service and its dynamic leader in your vision, and not just having a vision, because anybody can have it, but the ability to see it through and implement it, that it will last to help Black people for generations in that community. So kudos and congratulations to you and to all of the listening audience in Louisville that are a part of the Urban League movement and give you the support that you need to support those most in need.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Michael, think about that. Because Sadiqa could have said, listen, there's a pandemic going on. We've got this development happening, but I have to pause on that right now. Or she could have said, hey, listen, I know there's protests going on and we are fighting for justice for Breonna Taylor and for all Black people, but I've got this development going on, so I can't focus on that right now. She could have picked and choose, and it wouldn't have been unreasonable for her to say, yeah, listen, I'm going to do this thing or that thing, but that's not what the movement is. The movement is all of these things, and it's all these things all at once, and it's not what Sadiqa's leadership is. Her leadership is rich, and it is deep, and it is bold, and it is thick, and it is heavy, and it is serious, and it is on time all the time. So the choices that she made to do all the things are exactly what it means to be a leader in the mold of Sadiqa Reynolds. And Michael, thank you for saying what you said. I am honored to be in your number, sis, and I am so proud of the work that you have done. It is close to me, even though we are not near.
Thank you all. This is about the movement, though. I appreciate that, and I love you all. Y'all have reached out independently, and I know I have your support. I could not have done it without all of you and the rest of our colleagues. This has been a journey, but I wanted tonight for people to understand the level of talent and the level of leadership and passion that we have in the movement, and to recognize, just Mark's leadership. I always say this, like, I'm always proud to see him on television representing us and standing strong. And each of you, it is hard to be a slouch in this group. Like, you got to be willing to step up and do what needs to be done. And I think we're all doing that. I think we're all doing that in the places where we are. So I appreciate the love, and I hope you feel it in return.
Well, as we are ending this, first of all, I just want to thank all of you all, starting with the Louisville Urban League and Sadiqa Reynolds, for asking me to moderate this. It's both been an honor and the easiest part of the job that I've had to do all day long, because you all do magnificent work in your respective worlds. Michael McMillan, I pass through and come visit St. Louis often. My best friend lives there, and it's on my way to home. And so, I know the work you do. I was just in Portland about a year and a half ago. Oat Straw ice cream, the straw and ice cream place that I'm in love with.
Salt and Straw.
Oh my God. I'm glad there's not one here in Louisville, Kentucky. And Mr. Morrell, thank you so much for bringing your national gravitas and presence to this conversation. And New Orleans, there's nothing more to say. Another one.
And Michael McMillan, I'm going to claim, Ella Jones, who's the mayor of Ferguson, is actually from New Orleans.
Yes.
He's from a neighborhood called Gerttown, Hollygrove. And it's just so powerful to see so many people making so many contributions. I want to thank you, congratulate you on your career, and Sadiqa, happy 100. It's quite a milestone for the institution. And, you followed a very important leader in Louisville, and you have literally built on that foundation and kicked it up a couple of notches. So we're especially proud, and Michael too. Michael followed an iconic leader and has kicked it up a notch. And Kenge, you came in behind a series of leaders and have really established the Urban League of Portland as a civil rights voice in Oregon. So I'm in awe of you all, and I'm in support of you all, and you make me proud.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Likewise.
That's a great note to end on, but since it is Sadiqa's birthday, so to speak. So to speak. You make 100 look good, girl. We're gonna give you the last word.
Well, I'll just say this. I'm very thankful to my colleagues and to our leader, Mark Morial, who's here to Louisville. He's actually stood on the land that we were able to develop. I hope it is not lost on anyone that was a 24 acres of contaminated land that we cleaned. And we did that in community. We did that because the community supported the project, because there were people willing to invest in our vision and in our dream. And I think we have helped to change not just that little part of the community, but this entire city will be better because of it. And I'm better because of you all and your support of me and the Louisville Urban League. And I just want to say this, I'll end like I usually do. I saw Maya Angelou on Oprah once, and she said that she heard a man coming into her home, or she heard the door opening and just sort of this, and then she heard these footsteps walking towards her bedroom. And she said she leaned up in the bed and she reached over and opened her drawer and pulled out a gun. And she said out loud into the darkness, "Is this what you are willing to die doing?" And then there was a pause, and then footsteps going the other way, and the door closed. And every day of my life, because this is hard work, I ask myself, is this what I am willing to die doing? And every day, the answer is yes. And so I thank you all for fighting with me and for allowing me to fight with you. I love you. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
Love you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Love you, Sadiqa. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Michelle.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone. Thanks for watching.
Good night.